So Donald Trump made a huge mistake, as usual, one of many. When he was talking to James Comey, this was before he fired Comey, and Comey's still the FBI director. He told him several times, he brought up the issue of what he called the golden showers thing. 3 different times with James Comey, his FBI director, asked him to look into disproving it because he said his wife was upset about that news. When he brought it up, he said it couldn't possibly be true. And Comey, it tells in his notes at the time, like, why is the president even talking to me about this? I had no inkling or sense that it could possibly be true. But he keeps insisting, no, it's really, really not true. And he's like, okay. And then he gave unnecessary details, because that's what pathological liars do. And that's what's gotten him in trouble. So here's what he said. According to Comey's notes at the time, again, Comey not fired. He's just taking notes. He just talked to the president. He's the FBI director. There's no reason he has any animus towards Trump at that time. He's just noting what the conversation was. He says Trump had spoken to people who had been on the trip with him, and they had reminded him that he didn't stay overnight in Russia for that. So let me explain. The so-called P-tape that's in the Steele dossier that got leaked and Trump is obsessed about, and now there's investigations on whether parts of that dossier are true and that Donald Trump actually is beholden to the Russian government and oligarchs, right? In that is the golden showers thing, where Trump goes into a hotel in Russia, the same room that the Obama stayed in, according to the dossier, and he has 2 Russian prostitutes pee on the bed. Now, I never believed that. I told you guys a long time ago, I'm like, that is too outrageous. It's like a weird story. I don't know why anybody would make that up, but it just sounds too ridiculous to be true. Besides, Trump's a germaphobe, and he said that to Comey at the time too. He's like, I wouldn't do that, I don't like germs. And besides which, it didn't really matter, because for a claim that outrageous, you actually have to have evidence, and it didn't look like they had solid enough evidence. But the way that Trump is denying it was so over the top and so weird. And then he adds this part where he says, oh no, I didn't even stay overnight in Russia on that 2013 trip. That's when the Miss Universe pageant was in Moscow. Now, in Comey's notes, he says, okay, all right, you can corroborate that. And then another time that he's talking to Comey, he says it again. Here's that. Trump made the same claim a second time, telling Comey in a later Oval Office meeting that he hadn't stayed overnight in Russia during the Miss Universe trip, as Comey wrote. Okay, so 2 different times, like, I did not stay overnight, so I couldn't have been in a hotel room. It was totally needless to say that, and when we first covered that story, I told you that's gonna be a lie that's gonna be really easy to disprove. Well, now journalists have disproved it, both Politico and Bloomberg. So let me start with Politico. In fact, they explain, Trump arrived in Moscow, where he attended the Miss Universe pageant, which he owned at the time, on a Friday. He left in the early morning hours of the following Sunday, spending 1 full night and most of a second one in the Russian capital. Oops. So, well, how do they know that though? You know, in order to get to Moscow, you got to get on a plane, and there are records of those planes. So easy. Flight records obtained by Politico show Trump touched down at Moscow's, sorry for the pronunciation, Vnukovo International Airport on the afternoon of Friday, November 8th, staying over Friday night and most of Saturday night before departing from Moscow in the early morning hours on Sunday. Politico continues to explain the different ways that we know that Trump was there. First of all, flight records, open and unshut case. But well, let's go forward. Also on that Friday, the upscale restaurant Nobu Moscow posted on Facebook a photo of Trump and one of his Russian business partners, Emin Agalarov, standing outside the restaurant. Now wait a minute, the Miss Universe pageant's on Saturday. If you never stayed overnight, how could you be there on a Friday? In fact, this knucklehead has pictures on Facebook, Instagram, and tweet all over Moscow when he's there on Friday and Saturday. Why did you lie like that? You know why? It's because it's the same thing I've been telling you guys. He's really, really dumb. He doesn't think 1 step ahead. And he's been used to lying his whole life and getting away with it. The story I gave you yesterday about the Forbes 400 list, where he would just make up preposterous claims about his wealth when he barely had anything. The only thing he had was his father's inheritance or whatever money that his dad had loaned him. And people would not believe the whole story, but they'd believe half of it. And he's like, oh my God, I just made up that I have $200 million and they gave me credit for $100 million when I don't even have $5. So he's been used to lying and getting away with it his whole life. Here's more proof. The next day, Saturday, November 9th, Facebook post showed Trump at the Ritz during the day, and in the afternoon, he tweeted that he'd gotten a tour of Moscow. You dumbass, you tweeted that you were in Moscow those 2 days. Anyway, that evening, he attended a Miss Universe pageant, followed by an after party whose scheduled start time was 1 a.m. By that time, Sunday, November 10th. You think we can't look up when the Miss Universe pageant was there? And we can't just go on your social media and find out that you were there the day earlier, stayed overnight, and then stayed most of Sunday? But the last two are my favorite. So finally, Sunday night, he lands back in America and tweets immediately, I just got back from Russia, learned lots and lots. Moscow's a very interesting and amazing place. US must be very smart and very strategic. Well, it was not very smart and strategic to tweet when you got back into America when we could just trace it and find out that you were lying about whether you stayed overnight in Russia or not. And then you have to ask the question, why? Why would you lie about that if you didn't do the golden showers thing? And then he got his personal security guy to also lie for him. But that lie also exposed what actually happened. So now back to Politico. According to media reports last fall, Schiller testified to Congress, that's the security guy, that during a daytime business meeting, a person he did not recognize offered to send 5 women to Trump's hotel room that night. Schiller said he rejected the offer. Schiller reportedly testified that he stood outside Trump's hotel room for a period that night before going to bed himself, having seen no women enter the room. How could you stand in front of his hotel room if he didn't have a hotel room and he didn't stay there that night? Oops. You gotta at least coordinate your stories, but these are incompetent, well, fill in the blank, and there is a lot of those guys. But incompetent guys who go around and go, okay, all right, now, you say the 5 women didn't come, okay, Schiller? They didn't come. In fact, like a weirdo, you stood in front of my hotel room the entire night because you don't sleep ever, and you made sure that no women came in. And later, I'll lie that I didn't even stay in that hotel. There's Donald Trump in a nutshell for you guys. So now, given that he is clearly lying, clearly covering it up, clearly stayed in Russia that night, the Steele dossier said that he stayed there in that hotel, I now believe there's a pretty good chance that that tape exists. And just like with Stormy Daniels, why settle when she's one of dozens of women who've accused you of different things? And that one was a consensual affair because Stormy Daniels might have pictures. The Russians might have video. And the last thing Donald Trump wants is for anyone to see him naked. Keep it real. That is definitely part of what's happening with Donnie Tiny Hands. So he's in a panic over it, throwing out one lie after another. Jesus, man, what a weirdo. What you just watched was one of the videos that we do today, but we actually do a whole 2-hour show every single day. It's a podcast. You could watch it in video or listen to it as audio. You can download it, you can stream it, and you get it completely ad-free if you could become a member of the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.